Leggett, Head of Investor Relations at London South East. I'm joined today by two different generations of car owners, Derek Terrington and his son William. You may know Derek better as an analyst at Hardman Co and one of the leading media analysts of his generation. His son is an up-and-coming motoring journalist, and together they wrote a recent broker note for Hardman Co about the future of the car. Greetings to you both.
Hi.
Hello there.
So let's start with you, William. Despite a third of all households owning two cars, do you see attitudes to car ownership amongst town-dwelling younger people changing things forever?
Well, actually, no, I don't think they're going to change things forever per se. I mean, as you say in the first part of that question, a third of all households own two cars, which shows a huge demand for personal and private transport. Outside of a city, people with families, they still need to get around to the shops, go on holiday, school run, whatever you name, really. I would view this whole town-dwelling younger person part of the market just as another niche. So these people in the town, it's actually quite difficult to own a car, really. It's not the most convenient thing. So out of this has actually come car sharing. But even that's precarious in terms of its progress. So no, I don't think it's going to change things forever. I think it's just part of a shifting market. And fundamentally, the basic needs of a car as personal transport, they still remain.
Okay, Derek, let's bring you in at this point. This contrasts fairly sharply with the experience that your parents would have had with cars, because they actually regarded cars as really a must-have, a really desirable object, weren't they?
They very much were, and you saved up very hard to buy your first car, and you were very proud of it indeed, and whatever powered it didn't trouble you. But those were different days, and certainly, though, as you got into your career, you still aspired to have a bigger and better car. That attitude has shifted slightly between generations, but that's when we start to talk about changing technology and changing fuel drives.
Mm. So my dad personifies that. He was the bank manager. He was one of the few people in the village who actually owned a car. And when he put it into the garage, he actually got his children, i.e. me, to try it before we all went to have our tea.
Well, absolutely. No, I still remember my father's first car, and I mean the pleasure it gave almost the whole family. But that Morris Minor 1000 was polished and washed, you know.
Okay, William, why is it critical that OEMs grasp that brands will slowly die if younger city dwellers can get by without a car at all? And we have Ubers, we have car shares, we have rental vehicles, all preferred options in a city.
Okay, so I would say that brands generally, they aren't slowly dying. I mean, it's easy to say they're slowly dying for a number of reasons. First of all, these young people in cities, but first of all, very important to say that these people, they're going to move on from being bachelors in the city. They're going to eventually have families, possibly even move away. Their salaries will increase. So once again, I don't think they are a deciding factor. And even today, German manufacturers, for example, they actually have more performance cars than ever before. Luxury cars are still selling in huge numbers. So that market is actually doing very strongly indeed.
But will they sell to those younger people who are going to become the next generation of car drivers? Will they be buying expensive BMWs and Audis?
Well, eventually they could find the incentive to. But at the moment, one trend amongst younger buyers is PCP finance. Now, on the face of it, it looks like a very good idea, but I actually call this the smartphone mentality. So the people who like these, yes, they want a premium manufacturer, but what brand they choose is not number one place. They just want the best deal. It's kind of like the smartphone contract. You want the latest model every few years, and you don't want to commit to actually owning it or maintaining it. You could say that this is undermining brand loyalty as such. However, once again, if people were not interested in brand loyalty at all, I don't believe any manufacturer would bother making the high-end luxury and performance cars that they continue to in very large numbers. The other thing is that,
who makes the fat profit from the PCP contracts, though?
Oh, it's the dealerships, totally. I mean, if you look at a list price of a car to buy in cash, it's a noticeable amount lower than PCP finance, and you have to take into the amounts you will be spending every single month. So buying a car out of PCP finance is actually not the best deal ever. It may be easier on you in the short term because you're not paying out a big 5-figure sum, but in the long term, you're spending more money. It's really just to benefit lending companies and dealerships to get customers coming in and out every 3 years. So it's a bit of marketing, bit of people being taken in by marketing. But the conflict of interest amongst premium manufacturers are actually driverless cars and the aforementioned car sharing. Because with these cars, you wouldn't really be interested in a brand or a model if you aren't going to drive it or own it respectively. So I have found that for German car manufacturers to be investing in all of this, it's a bit of a conflict of interest when at the same time these companies are making cars that can go around the Nürburgring in the fastest time ever. So on the one hand, it's easy to say they're slowly dying, but on the other hand, there is still a huge core support for brands. That's my concluding point on that. And I don't think brands are going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, Derek, back to you. As you wrote the note together, did anything which William say come as a genuine surprise to you? You mentioned at the very top of the note that the most amazing thing that you discovered 20 years ago was that young people simply didn't consume TV through a TV set. Was there anything on a par with that by way of surprises that William came up with?
Well, there were surprises, you're right. But the key surprise for me really was the way in which the corporate world is actually adapting to the changes in technology, specifically fuel technology. And you're seeing major manufacturers like Toyota, for example, really hedging their bets very carefully across the piece with hybrids and EVs. And of course, petrol cars still are 90% plus of their output, and they're all aggressively marketed, but they are hedging their bets in regard to the future. But I just still think that, if there's going to be any major change into a different fuel train, then these are the people who are going to master it. I suppose that the extent to which they're doing that was surprising to me, because the investment they've made has been huge. And
so you think Toyota's strategy of hedging your bets across the spectrum is the way to go?
Yes, I mean you can't really dispute it. I mean, they're not leaving anything to chance. They and Toyota very recently said that they were confident of beating Tesla in the electronic market. At the meantime, substantially continuing their production as a world leader in the petrol market.
Okay, let's cut to the chase here, William. Manufacturers of both high-end marques and mass-market cars seemingly desperate to improve their electric car offerings, which suggests to me that they think the internal combustion engine may indeed be dead. Is battery power the clear winner in the midterm? And if not, why do you think not?
Well, actually, I don't think battery powered is going to be the ultimate solution. The first thing you need to consider is how it's the difference between electric vehicles being an alternative and being a replacement for the petrol car. Those two things are completely different demands. And frankly, at the moment, battery-powered electric vehicles, even though the range is improving, it's starting to hit 400 miles, possibly a bit more, you're still left with the environmental issues of used battery packs, and actually getting the lithium itself, which involves energy-intensive mining and is not environmentally friendly itself. So the German manufacturers have a very cautious approach. What they're doing is they're just introducing a few. So at the moment, there's been actually another one since I wrote the document for Hardman, and there's another one upcoming. But this still only totals 3, one each for the range they're meant to be accompanying. So it's a cautious approach. And on the other hand, German manufacturers are looking towards hybridization. So you have two types. well, actually three. There's mild hybridization, which isn't hybridization as such. There's no electric motor moving the car. It's forcing more air into the engine. Then you have plug-in hybrids, which is an electric motor combined with a petrol engine, and that accompanies the petrol engine and basically just makes it more efficient and has a huge and, in fact, vastly improved power output. And the other one is the traditional hybrid, which isn't actually proving so popular. This is the one where you have an electric motor to start off with at lower speeds, and then it switches to the petrol. That's actually not proving so popular. So overall, I think the way forward is actually with plug-in hybrids accompanied by mild hybrids. It offers the best way for both petrol and electric to get on, as it were. You have a very efficient petrol engine, possibly mildly hybridized already, along with an electric motor. And now we're seeing power and miles per gallon figures, which we couldn't have imagined even 10 years ago. So I think that's the way forward. And these cars, they don't have huge, heavy batteries to lumber around. They may have a small one, but that's about it. And they are in the shape of conventional cars. The other thing I do notice though, is that electric cars, they are done on different platforms. And often these platforms seem quite heavy and quite sort of bulbous in their design. They aren't like combustion engine cars, which isn't exactly a point in their favor. So no, I don't think the internal combustion engine is actually dead as such. I actually think the whole electrification, it's actually just a new age for combustion engines rather than the demise of it.
We'll end up ultimately having more sophisticated combustion engines, presumably.
Yes. I think diesel, we'll see that go back to where it was 20 years ago, just a small option in the range at the most. It could even go completely, given its bad reputation from a few years ago. So I think it's going to be, rather than a choice of petrol and diesel, it's going to be a choice of petrol with a range of hybridization with a bit of electric on the side, assuming people still want battery power in 5-10 years' time.
What about hydrogen fuel power? I as a consultant, I worked with ITM Power a few years ago, and I fell in love with hydrogen, but it's been very much slower to gain traction. Why do you think that hydrogen is a likely winner in terms of zero-emission fuels?
Okay, so at the moment, hydrogen power, it's not exactly easy to extract at the moment. There's a lot of problems with that. However, I'm sure the technology will improve as time goes on. The problems are only with the extraction. As for the actual car itself, it's very good. You have a zero-emission electric motor, and you have the convenience of a petrol car. You simply take it to a filling station. So that side, it's all done. It's ready to go. It's just a matter of extracting this hydrogen, and I'm sure it will become even better as technology improves. And that's actually a much clearer path than how, for example, you're going to obtain all this lithium required for batteries. That's actually a much more sketchy path to look at. So actually, I think hydrogen could pay off longer term, but just not right now.
Derek, let me ask you about the diesel engine. Governments, in a regulatory sense, got it wrong over the diesel engine, although they're now driving diesel engines to the margins. Will they regulate any better in the future around fuel types, or will they once again follow the auto industry?
Well, you've got to wonder to what extent governments are in tune with the massive speed of technological change that's going on everywhere. And the car market is just another example of that sort of trend. Certainly, they got it wrong over diesel. Whether they understood, I thought people understood about the problem of diesel particulates years ago, but no, apparently they had to catch up with that. The other fuel types, well, they give their blessing to electronic vehicles, of course, in policy terms. But trying to for net zero carbon operation is really potentially quite damaging for the industry. I mean, they're going fast, but they're not going that fast. So that's going to be quite difficult. So there seems to be a sort of competition between governments as to who can actually signal virtuously that they're bringing the electronic cars into play as fast as possible.
Okay, the automotive industry, as we know, is a multi-billion-pound industry with many listed companies. But strangely, Tesla, the only EV-only supplier, has a simply massive market cap despite not being profitable. Do you have a view on Tesla, or do you have a view on where we should invest in other listed automotive companies?
I think even the chairman of Tesla has been surprised by his own share price performance. The Tesla performance is really the mirror image of the way in which the tech stocks have performed so vigorously. People are not sure of what the impact of fast-changing technology is, so they've bought into areas where they can see success and competence, and that's why they bought Google, Facebook, etc., etc. I just think that any other company that looks like being as successful as that in the tech space is really going to be flattered by investors because they don't have a huge amount of choices.
So would you be long on tech and short on? Would you be long on tech and short on automotive?
Well, that's been the case for a couple of years now. Yes. I don't know when that's going to change. After the election of President Biden, if I can call him that, the stock market reverted to the same trends, and the tech shares started powering ahead again. So that's still the right way to go.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Derek and William Terrington, thank you so much for joining me today. Meanwhile, thank you for watching, and in these difficult times, do stay safe.